I have been here for the last time 25 years ago, and I was working for the OSCE observing elections, and I always found that what Europe had done to us, to you, was utterly unfair after the fall of the Soviet Union, because on the one hand you were not allowed to join Romania, as there was a big trend in those days. On the other hand, they did not give you a candidate status to the European Union until very recently, so you found yourself there in the middle of this complicated context here. And of course that reminded me also a little bit of our situation when we were a poor country surrounded by conflicting big powers in the days when France and Germany were regularly fighting each other at every generation. Things have changed a lot recently. In those days, I'm talking about the pre-Second World War, or until the end of the Second World War, you can say that states were sovereign on their territory in the sense that they had the monopoly of competencies over a territory and a people, and most of the time the way your sovereignty was infringed upon or interfered with was through force. That's why we, to protect our sovereignty, we always thought absolutely necessary to keep a strong army. Now you will not believe it, but we have the largest density of tanks, for instance, in Europe. We have kept the militia system, so each Swiss citizen is also a soldier. I don't know how it is in Moldova. Do you have a conscript army or a professional army? Professional. Anyway, our young people, they serve in the army during about 10 years. Every year they have a refreshment course, and I remember a Swiss general visiting Israel and watching a demonstration by Israeli special forces. When he came to visit me afterwards, I asked him, "So General, it must have been very impressive, those Israeli soldiers, they have such a high reputation." And he told me, they know how to do that after 11 months, they can do that after 3 months. So at least our generals have a very high opinion of our army. Thanks God. And maybe it is because, we like to believe it is because we have always taken care of our army. We never had to use it, or never. The last time we used it was in a civil war in the 19th century. But things has changed, and the vulnerability of small states in particular has grown dramatically after the Second World War, and especially after the liberalization and globalization of the economy starting in the 70s, or you can say the 80s. Because our vulnerability has become stronger as our economy started to depend on others, on the big countries, on our markets. If you look at the ratio between global trade and the global GDP in 1970, it's about 20%, meaning that 20% of the world, the richness of nation depending on trade, and 80% on domestic economy. Today, this figure is about 60%, so the dependency to trade, therefore the dependency to your economic partner is much higher. And this is creating a problem for small states, because it means, since usually we are trading with the most important states, it gives leverage on these very big states to put pressure on small states to do whatever they want. I will give you one example. In 2014, when the first batch of sanctions was taken by the European Union against Russia, we decided not to join the sanctions against Russia in the name of our policy of neutrality, and we took measures to prevent our territory to be used to circumvent the sanctions. In other words, we didn't want all the trade between the EU or America and Russia to go through Switzerland, and it did not. In 2022, it was not possible to maintain this position because of the pressures from the big powers. So we had to apply the sanctions. So what I'm saying is that in a globalized world, it's much more difficult to maintain your sovereignty and to be deciding on what is really best for you without outside interference. The number or the areas of interference have increased dramatically with the globalization. I'm talking about the economy, but you could speak about the culture or about the media or about the narratives. I mean, if there is one thing which is striking today, is how much the fight around Ukraine is also a fight to control the narratives. I could not prevent thinking about that when I saw that Durov, the founder of Telegram, was arrested in Paris. I could not prevent thinking about the importance of this battle of narratives when I saw that Twitter was forbidden in Brazil, nothing to do with Russia in that case, but still the fight is very much about the narratives as well, and it's not, of course, a coincidence if the European Union has forbidden most Russian media from operating inside the European Union. In times, globalization, but since the war in Ukraine, since the Russian aggression, we have to name things by their name, since the Russian aggression on Ukraine, we have also seen a dramatic polarization of our environment, which is making it hard for small states. You are either with us or against us. This is what we hear in many places. And how can we, as small states, resist this kind of pressures to join one side or the other side? How can we remain neutral, or at least outside of this polarized world? Well, we have seen various options. We have seen the option Sweden-Finland, who decided that it was better for their sovereignty and for their security to join NATO. And we have seen other examples of countries who managed to balance their interest by not joining the sanctions, but remaining sort of immune to sanctions or to pressures from one or the other party. I'm thinking of Turkey. Turkey, despite being a NATO member, has managed to balance its interest between East and West and not to join the sanctions. I'm thinking about Serbia, a country which is not really an economic giant, but still which has managed to keep good relations both with Russia and with the West and the European Union. As far as we are concerned, this debate, I mean, your debate is very much about, are we better off within or outside the EU? Can the EU offer us some kind of protection plus also economic benefits, or is it better to stay out? This is a debate I don't know enough. You have many experts here, and I don't want to enter into that debate, but I can tell you about our own experience. EU is not an option for us. We have very good relations with the EU. The EU is our main trading partners every day. More than 1 billion euros in goods are being exchanged both ways between Switzerland and the European Union. Every day, about 400,000 workers from the European Union are coming to Switzerland to work and back in the evening. So the relationship is working very well, and I don't think we really need to join. The real questions today is whether we come closer to NATO without joining, while maintaining formally legal neutrality. Legal neutrality means, according to the law on neutrality, which is enshrined in the Hague Convention of 1907, you do not provide any military advantage to one of the parties. And this is what we've been doing. We have refused to sell weapons to Ukraine or to Russia, but we have even refused that the weapons we had sold to Denmark and Germany be transferred to Ukraine. And that put us in a very difficult situation especially with the European Union, especially with Denmark and Germany. Now there is a whole trend, especially in the military establishment, to move away from this practice and to get closer to NATO without joining, because there wouldn't be a consensus or a majority in Switzerland to join NATO. 90% of the Swiss population, according to polls, are very much attached to neutrality as an identity factor, as a major constituent of the Swiss identity. Let's not forget that, well, every society is divided. Ours also. We have about 60% of German speakers, about 25% of French speakers, the rest are Italian speakers. Well over 30% of our population has some immigration background, mostly from Portugal, Spain, Italy, and the Balkan region. So it's a kind of a mosaic, and you need some cement. And the three things which are keeping us together maybe is this concept of neutrality, but also other things is the army. Frankly, the fact that all these new migrants have to go through the army is a very important factor of unity of our society. And the third thing is the economy and the education also. I do believe that the fact that we have a strong economy with a GDP of about 700 billion makes us also stronger to resist outside pressure. So on the one hand, still you have part of the establishment who would like to come closer to NATO. But on the other side, we have also a strange mix of nationalist right and leftists who for totally different reasons would like Switzerland not just to stay neutral, but to enshrine in the federal constitution a new amendment that would prohibit Switzerland from applying sanctions which have not been decided by the UN Security Council, which means that in that case we should we should withdraw from the sanction regime against Russia and other countries. We will have a very fierce debate. The debate will be in the first half probably of 2026, and I think that may be a defining moment for our future. Maybe one thing about the way the Swiss federal system, it's quite different from any other system. Speaking of sovereignty, in Switzerland the cantons are sovereign. We have 26 cantons in our federal state, and actually the cantons are sovereign and they have delegated some of their competencies to the federal state. In most other federal states it's the opposite. It is the federal state which has decentralized some of the competencies to the various parts. So if you would have a federal state here, I don't know, I'm risking myself, but let's assume Transnistria and other part of Moldova would be, Gagauzia, I don't know, would be part of a federal state, then it would be Transnistria giving some competencies to the federal state and not the other way around. And the other main feature or system is that it's very easy to oblige the government to organize a referendum. You just need to collect 100,000 signatures under a text, and then the government is obliged to submit it to the vote. And for that to become a new constitutional amendment, you need two majorities. The majority of the people, so 50 plus 1%, like almost everywhere else. We don't have the 30% participation clause. But then we have another clause, which is a majority of the cantons, each one of them counted separately. So the voice of Zurich, with 1.1 million inhabitants, has the same weight as the vote of Appenzell with 15,000 inhabitants. And that's a way to preserve this kind of balance. But this vote will be, I think, will be very much defining for our future. Our experience has been that being on essential issues like this factor of identity, which is neutrality, or on other stupid topics like once we had to vote on whether farmers who are not cutting the horns of the cows should get more subsidies than farmers who cut the horns. So you see that was the kind of things we vote about. But all the time, the results, even if it's a very small margin. Last time we had a serious vote on the European Union, which was to join not the EU, but the European Economic Area together with Norway. The Swiss people voted no by 50.3%, a very tiny margin, but this was never put into question. So I think, yes, the democracy is the dictatorship of the majority, but for democracy to work, I think it's very important that those who lose in this kind of votes accept the verdict. In our case, it has always been the case. I think it's a sign of maturity. And I will stop there.